quite that bad. The ones that were more excessive, I left out. I decided not to use. All right, so we are at week 4, and I've done my best to trim down a little bit, so we won't be an hour and a half today. Thanks, Mark. You need all the help you can get, buddy.
Yes.
I don't think you need to. And I decided to chop the first part because I just time. So diving in, we got 3 approaches we're going to do. As the reminder here, spiritual, the sort of attitude, heart, mind section, and then behavioral. And so we'll start with spiritual. And the big focus I wanted to kind of look at today was the idea of like the husband as the father, servant, and like kind of the roles of the godly man. And it fits with the rest of the stuff we're talking about today. So, guys, if you want to beat me up in the parking lot, I understand. Let's start with Ephesians 5:25-27, which we actually talked about the first week. But we're going to kind of look at it from a slightly different perspective. This is Paul's commands to husbands. Husbands, love your wives just as Christ loved the church and gave himself up for her, to make her holy, cleansing her by the washing with water through the word, and to present her to himself as a radiant church without stain or wrinkle or any other blemish, but holy and blameless. And the reason I'm starting with this one is because it kind of gives that job, right? Like, love as Christ loved the church. And this verse is kind of messed up in some ways, the way that we look at it, because immediately preceding it, what comes right after this, right before this verse? Do you guys know?
Wives, submit to your husbands.
Yeah, wives, submit to your husbands as under Christ, right? And historically, this has been one of those verses that has been, like somewhat mishandled. Is that fair to say? Talking to Mary about this, she told me about this Help Meet class that she took where like the pastor taught it, and there was a lot of stuff about, the wife basically playing the role of housemaid. And if your husband gets mad and hits you, you should just accept that that's part of your being a wife, and taking his aggression out. And yeah, that's not so much. And so I kind of wanted to look at this one, and I didn't have a video for it. I'm sorry. The video I picked out just was not appropriate. So start with Mark. And Jesus said to them, context. In this section of Mark, what's going on? The disciples are arguing over who will be the greatest, right? Who's going to be the greatest? When we show up in heaven, I'm going to be the greatest, and you guys will be next to me. And they're arguing and fighting, which they did a lot because they were all anticipating this great reward God would give them and who would be the most exalted. And Jesus called them and said to them, you know that those who are considered rulers by the Gentiles lord it over them, and their great ones exercise authority over them, but it shall not be so amongst you. But whoever would be great among you must be your servant, and whoever would be first among you must be the slave of all. For even the Son of Man came not to be served, but to serve, and to give his life as a ransom for many. What's he talking about? Who's awake still? Can I actually just lose everyone? Sugar coma already.
We don't have the children's stamina for it.
Any thoughts? What's he talking about?
Are you asking for the less obvious answer? Or?
I'm asking for an answer. Any answer at this point.
I guess he's kind of just talking about putting somebody else first before yourself.
Yeah, that's kind of it, right? Anything else to add to that?
Even to the point of giving up your life?
Yeah, that kind of fits in there too, right? So, anything else you can pull out of this one?
Well, the rulers lord it over them and they exercise authority, but that's not going to be the way that we should do it. It's not.
I'm
better than you.
Yeah.
I mean, they're-
Which kind of breaks out the irony of the approach that has historically been taken. Hey, woman, you're supposed to submit to me, right? Because it's essentially living the way the Gentiles live, lording it over them, saying, hey, I'm in charge, you need to submit, you need to do these things, you need to, that's the standard of the world, and it's not our standard. And actually, I think if you draw the parallel directly, the rulers of the Gentiles, and he's saying, listen, if you want to have authority, if you want to be great, you need to be serving, right? And so, like out of the gate, if husbands are supposed to be in charge, if we're supposed to be the head of the household, if we're supposed to lead our family, it means we serve, right? Particularly, like, since the passage that Paul gives us, he says, love like Christ loved the church. And, the Son of Man, meaning Jesus, came not to be served, but to serve. And so, like, Christ gives us this example, right? Come out and, like, serve your family, take care of your family, make sure that they are, like, and there are lots of ways that we serve our families. I mean, most of us work, men, right? Most of us have jobs, and that's part of how we serve our families, but that's not the end of it, right? It goes beyond that. It's all sorts of things that we do. And some of that's going to play out in what we're going to talk about in a little bit here, but just to ask, how do we serve? How do you guys try to serve your families? That was a real question.
Well, you provide, number one, I think.
Yeah.
If you love your family, you don't want to spoil them, but you certainly want to provide the necessities and the needs of life. I get a lot out of this, being humble of heart. What you do is not to be boastful or to be a ruler over anybody, but to come alongside of somebody as a partner, not. Are you hearing this, Mark and Sam? Just
Well,
kidding you.
But it's a really hard thing to do. I mean, it is a really hard thing to do. I know I can think of several instances. My wife's not here, so I can say whatever I want.
You're recording this.
I am recording it. I can think of several instances where we've been opposed on decisions, and my wife will say, well, I've agreed that you're head of the household, and so you can make a choice, but this is my perspective. And, then I can kind of do whatever I want. And sometimes that means making, not the decision I want to make, right? And it's, that it's easy to say, well, I'm the man and I'm going to do what I want. We're going to do this, and that's all there is to it. But I don't think that's what Christ is giving us here, right? Like I would think that's part of it. This morning I was working, sitting on the couch trying to get this done, honestly. And Abby came in, she got up early. I got up early so I could work on it, and then she got up early because she knew I was working, I think, I don't know. And she came in and Abby said, Daddy, I want to sit by you because I'm cold. I want to cuddle with you for a while because I'm cold. And she picked up my notebook and threw it on the floor, knocked in my lap, and I kind of, and I said, honey, I gotta have my notebook and I gotta work. You can cuddle, but I gotta work. And, I kind of compromise, but there's a part of me that's saying, just go back to bed. Go watch TV, go do something else. Don't, I need to get this done. But at the end of the day, there's this thing I've read over and over again that your daughter will learn how men are supposed to love them by having a relationship with you. And your sons will learn how to treat their wives by watching how you treat your wife and your daughter. I mean, and there's this whole servant thing where you got to realize that your kids are going to do what you do. And there ain't it's very difficult to break away from that, and that's something that needs to be taken seriously. Any other ways that men are supposed to newlywed? Daniel, how do you try to serve your wife?
Help out with the chores that she's usually taking care of when I'm at work.
Bringing chai tea?
Do things that I know that she'll appreciate, like yard work or, try to keep things nice.
Vacuumed up and cleaned the bathroom.
Wash her car, I don't know.
Mow the lawn, I think we discussed that.
Not miss a bill.
Yeah, these are, I mean, like the ways that we find to serve our spouse. I would argue that there's a huge element of selflessness that comes into it. It's very easy to say this is what I want to do or this is how I want to be in charge. And like as husbands, if we're going to be servants, we have to kind of put our own desires aside and like make theirs primary, which is what Jesus does with like, you know, us, you know, where his own desires become secondary to serving the Father and serving us like as a servant. I mean, like it's this huge thing. I have a passage from Ezekiel. Anybody know this one? Ezekiel 34. Son of man, prophesy against the shepherds of Israel. Prophesy and say to them, even to the shepherds, thus says the Lord God. Ah, shepherds of Israel, who have been feeding themselves, should not shepherds feed the sheep? You eat the fat, you clothe yourselves with the wool, you slaughter the fat ones, but you do not feed the sheep. And it keeps going. I don't want to include the whole passage. Who's he talking to, you think? This is a fishing answer. I hate it when people do that to me. He's talking to the priests, right? Talking to the leaders of Israel. These people are supposed to be like the religious authority. And
They're really good about taking care of themselves. That's about it.
yeah. That's I teased Twyla about the Rolls Royce.
Oh.
She put up a meme about like pastors having Rolls Royces and elders and deacons having nice cars, and then like, you know, the members of the church having no shoes, you know. And so I that's why I tease her about that whole thing, because like there is in a lot of places there's this sort of, you know, take care of me attitude amongst preachers. I mean, it is out there, and I think I'm well taken care of, so I can't say too much. But these guys, they weren't even taking care of the people. They weren't meeting their spiritual needs. They weren't leading them. They weren't shepherding them. They were self-centered. The reason I include this, like if you go through the whole chapter, God kind of goes on and he's like, hey, you guys are kind of bringing a lot of wrath on yourself. You know, you're supposed to be doing this. You're not. You know, understand I'm pretty ticked off. And then he comes out and says, I'm going to be the shepherd to my own people. I'm going to come out and be, you know, I'm going to bring them back and I'm going to be their shepherd myself. And I think part of that is pointing forward to Jesus, because Jesus shows up and he is our shepherd, right? When you jump into the New Testament, pastors and elders are called under shepherds. Did you know that? Or overseers, like we're under shepherds under Jesus. And then actually in Timothy, we learn that husbands are supposed to, like, before they're allowed to be under shepherds, they're supposed to like properly shepherd their own families. Like if you can't pastor your own family, you can't be a leader in the church, kind of thing. And I think part of the idea that comes with this is men are supposed to be spiritual leaders in their families, and a lot of times men pursue their own interest first. Does that make sense? Yes, sir.
It's kind of countercultural though. I mean, I sit in a monthly meeting where we talk about our feelings at work, and everybody talks about me and what I want, and you know, I'm at home and my kids are always bugging me, and I just want to get my stuff done. And so, you know, the selflessness I think is really lost, you know, in a daily outside of a Christian setting. I think you're hard to find selflessness unless there's some kind of means behind it, you know.
What do you guys think?
Amen.
I agree, yeah.
And actually, you know what? It's something the men's group has talked about quite a bit, is that it's hard to know sometimes as a guy. Like you can do really well in some areas, and it's easy to get blind to how you're not being selfless, like or how like you're not, you know, how you struggle in those areas until other people start pointing it out to you. Years ago, when I was a much worse person, you know, before Jesus cleaned me up as much as he has. I had a pastor who sat down, like when I really kind of started trying to get right with God again, I had a pastor who sat down and had a conversation with me, invited me out for lunch, and he flat out said, he's like, I watch you, you're not nice to your wife. Like you are just not a nice guy. I watch you, I don't understand how you can justify what you're doing. And I kind of sat there for a minute, and I was like, yep, you're right. I got to do that better. And like, you know, it was a whole different direction for me to work on as a guy. But that I just had no idea. Like I wasn't looking at that. I was looking at these other areas I needed to be right with God. And like, it wasn't until somebody sat me down and called me out outright, which is, I'm kind of shocked he did it now years later. I think Jess might have asked him to, or implied that that was something she would like. I don't know, it was a whole conversation. But like without people telling you, I mean, it's really hard to do, isn't it? Which is why accountability is huge. The men's group, we've talked about that several times. If you don't have other men around you keeping you accountable and helping you be like on your game, you just won't get better at this stuff. So real quick, is God okay with men like seeking their own interests as leaders? No. God designs leadership as like a service existence. Like we tend to look at it and say, oh, it's all about privilege, and it's really not. There's privilege to it, but privilege that comes with an enormous amount of responsibility. And the privilege is you get to stand in Jesus' spot. And you get to know Jesus in a way that like you otherwise wouldn't get to. But the responsibility that comes with it is that you have to meet the needs of your family. And you got to lead them spiritually, and you got to serve them, and you got to put their needs first. You got all these things that you got to do, and that's not a small thing. I did include more of the verse. The weak you have not strengthened, the sick you have not healed, the injured you have not bound up, the strayed you have not brought back, the lost you have not sought, and with force and harshness you have ruled them. Anybody ever seen a husband do that? So they scattered. Because there was no shepherd, they became food for the wild beasts. Years and years I watched youth group kids, like from the many churches I've worked for, where their fathers they cheated on the family with work. You know what I mean? Or the television, or both. And like you watch their kids just become food to the animals, like the sin and the wickedness in the world. You see them just get devoured by that nonsense, and their dads are nowhere there to like shepherd them and lead them. They're just not there. And like spiritual leaders have this job, but if men are going to be spiritual leaders, if men are going to be Christ to their wives, this is our job. My sheep were scattered. They wandered over the mountains and on every high hill. My sheep were scattered all over the face of the earth, and with no one to search or seek for them. And so like Jesus comes and plays this part, right? He heals, he brings people back, and he does all of these things. He leads with love and gentleness, like his yoke is easy and his burden is light and all of this other stuff. And then like husbands, we stand in his place and we love like him. Tall order? I mean, huge tall. John 13, one of my favorite verses in the Bible. I had never really started focusing on this until I preached it like last year. When he had washed their feet, after the Last Supper, Jesus takes off his clothes and washes his disciples' feet, which is a disgusting job in our culture. And then when they were practically barefoot and they had farm animals as cars, it was even grosser. And foot washing servants were the lowest of the low. They were made fun of in popular literature. I mean, it was a humiliating job, and Jesus does this job, and then he turns to his disciples, he says, and he puts his outer garments back on, resumed his place, and he said to them, "Do you understand what I have done to you? You call me teacher and Lord, and you are right, for so I am." Meaning, I'm teacher and I'm Lord, I'm over you guys. If I then, your Lord and teacher, have washed your feet, you also ought to wash one another's feet. For I have given you an example that you should do just as I have done to you. Truly, truly, I say to you, a servant is not greater than his master, nor is a messenger greater than the one who sent him. What's he mean? Fed y'all sugar. What's going on? Are we that tired?
Yes.
That a master is not above serving?
Supposed to lead by example.
Yeah, that's a huge chunk of it, right? We serve humbly, even in humiliating ways, maybe as a part of it. So we're not above Jesus, and if Jesus humiliated himself in service, we do it too. And actually, I think this is for all believers, but husbands, I'm pointing this out. I don't see how we get out of this as being part of our job, right? I'm not advocating you wash your wife's feet tonight, unless she wants you to, and that's a whole other conversation. You do that at home. What I am saying is, there are things that men look at and they say, I will not do that because it's beneath me, right? I've met husbands who won't change their kids' diapers. It's not my job. It's not really a Christ-like attitude, right? Like Christ took this humbling position and he served, and like we're not greater than him. If we're going to follow him and we're going to be his people and we're going to be his like disciples, he's our Lord, we have to do this stuff. Which means we have to serve our families in this way, humiliating ways. Last week we talked about, well, we'll get to that in a second. But this is the theme for today. Everybody with me? Theme for today is men, your job, humble servant. Just like Jesus. I have one more verse actually, apparently. Have this mind amongst you, which is yours in Christ Jesus, who, though he was in the form of God, did not count equality with God a thing to be grasped, but made himself nothing, taking the form of a servant, being born in the likeness of a man. So what Paul is writing here is he says, listen, Jesus was in the form of God, meaning he was God, but he didn't want to try and grab hold of this like authority being equal with God, like he wasn't grabbing it, and he wasn't trying to grasp it for himself. Instead, he stepped away and made himself nothing. And he opens it with, same mind amongst you, right? Take this stance in the way that you deal with each other. Service, selflessness, love, everything. Which, by the way, when you make a decision, gentlemen, is it easier? All right, those of y'all who've had real jobs, which is most of you, right? When you've worked for a guy who is lazy and kind of a no account and doesn't know what he's doing and treats you like crap, and he asks you to do something you don't want to do, what's your attitude toward it? Oh, gripe about it. Do the worst job you can. Are you more likely to, I mean, like I had a guy I worked for before I came here who was one of the best bosses I've ever met. When I work, I want to be like him. When I deal with my family, I think about this guy a lot. I think, well, how do I be more like this guy when I deal with my family? When he asked me to do stuff I didn't want to do, I did it. And I did it because he asked me, right? Like, there's a kind of leadership that comes with service that's like, you just can't get any other way. All right. Heart, mind, and attitude. I think I have a video. Yes, I do. It's a Skit Guys one. I stole the preview, so... yeah.
I messed up. So I told her, you got a mirror, you can see what you look like in those jeans. So anyway, I don't know what to do.
You just talk to her.
And tell her what?
You tell her how you feel.
I did. I told her, I feel like you look like your mother.
Okay, no, you need to use your words. You know, romantic words.
Oh. Wait, what?
Okay, honey, you take your wife by her hands and you just pour into her.
Wait. Am I holding her hands or am I pouring something? I can't do both.
What? No. God, you are going to pour words into your wife. You look her in the eyes, dead set, and you just let go. Because that's what she does to you, Todd. She makes you let go. And you say to her, you mean everything to me. And I would let go of everything if it means that I just get to hold you for the rest of my life. And that's what you do. What are you doing?
I'm calling my wife, and you are going to tell me some pretty words to say to her.
We are not doing this.
Hey, babe. No, don't hang up. I was an idiot, and I know you said some things too. You shouldn't say that. That's what I meant I have some things to say to you right now.
No.
While we're on the phone.
Stop it.
Just listen. She said I have 2 minutes.
What do I say? I'm sorry. For what? No, you tell her that.
I'm sorry. Babe?
She's still there. I can hear her breathing. Tell her I love you and you mean everything to me, and I am a fool because I don't tell you that more often.
I'm a fool for loving you. I should say that stuff more often.
You are the only reason I am half the man I am. Your love and constant support is my daily breath.
I'm half the man I am because of you, and your love is a constraint.
Constant support.
No, your love is constantly on my breath, daily.
You are the greatest blessing God has ever given me, and you are perfect for me.
Babe, you're the best thing God ever did for me. You're perfect. For me, you're perfect. You're not perfect.
What are you doing? Just tell me what to say. Sunsets are more beautiful when you are on the horizon.
You're more beautiful at sunset on the horizon.
Hello?
It totally worked. Babe, I'm gone in 60 seconds.
What a moron.
You were great.
I know, right?
The words you said, I heard. I had no idea.
Seriously? You had no idea that some women fall for that stuff? I'm just glad you're not that gullible. By the way, what's for dinner? I've messed up.
Use your words, my friend. Use those words.
Well, kind of working through the attitudes, heart, mind, attitude section. The first half of this series, or this section, is all about men dealing with their wives. Everybody kind of remember that? Last week we talked about the first three parts of the acronym: couple, closeness, which refers to like face-to-face time, right? Spending time one-on-one, putting in the time to like talk and doing it consistently. It doesn't need to be in hours. It needs to be in, everyday sections, like 15 minutes at a time, like is enough, but it's got to be predictable and every day and all this other stuff. It's very important to women to have closeness. If you do that, you are like 80% there. Openness means like actually talking with her. Understanding means putting the effort in to understand what she's saying and how she feels and all this other stuff. Some of these things are very difficult for men, right? I mean, they're kind of unnatural for us because we just don't work that way. And we have to stretch a little bit. The first one we're talking about this week is peacemaking. Wow, this is a little more complicated than you would think, but we started with that video because it's a blue and pink thing, right? We talked about this where women see the world through pink glasses, men see the world through blue glasses. We just interpret the world differently, and it creates all this crazy conflict. There's going to be conflict because men and women were designed to be put together, right? But we're totally different. When we're selfless, we do great. When we're selfish, we tend to fight, and we tend to not get along. And because of that, there's going to be conflict, but that conflict helps us grow Christ-like. It helps us become more like Jesus because we can learn to be patient. We can learn to do all of these things. By the way, where did we start today? Husbands, what's your job?
Serve.
Yeah, serve, selfless, humility, all of these things, right? And so as we talk about this peacemaking thing, heads up. This is the attitude you approach it with. Years ago, they did this study with children, little girls, They had these little girls play hopscotch, and they had little boys play a different game. I don't remember what it was. And the little girls playing hopscotch, what they found was, like observing them, that the girls didn't play the game to play the game. They played the game because it gave them an excuse to spend time together and talk, right? Like they played the game as a part of like relational stuff, because that's kind of what women do, right? They're all about relationship. The boys play games, and when they play games, they play the game to win, of course. Which is the difference between us, right? What they observed was when the little girls would have a conflict, they would argue, they would go their separate ways, they would spend time apart, they would come back, they would vent at each other, and then one of them would apologize, and as soon as one of them apologized, the other one would take credit for being wrong too, and then they would like talk about how, oh, I'm more wrong, oh, you're more, and they, there's sort of this cycle. And the way that women, like it kind of follows through in life, the way women tend to conflict is that they need to have this closure at the end, right? Like they argue, and when they're done arguing, they've got to kind of discuss it and like end it. I mean, women, am I wrong?
Hug it out.
No, you're not.
The boys, on the other hand, had their conflict. They went their separate ways. They came back. One of them might apologize. And then the line that the guy said was, drop it, right? We're going to talk about it. It's done. Or they just wouldn't talk about it at all, okay? And this follows through with like the rest of their lives, because when men get done having a conflict, we don't sit down and talk about our feelings at length, which is why what Kaylin said about work and Kaylin said about work and talking about their feelings every week seemed a little weird. But men, when we argue, we don't talk about our feelings when we're done, do we? We're more likely to say, all right, well, just let's let it go and move on, right? I mean, we just kind of put it away and that's it. Where this gets tricky is women still need closure, right? When they get to the end of the argument, they need to finish arguing. Whereas men, when they get to the end of the argument, they want to end the argument. Real quick, how many husbands in the room have said, hey, let's drop it? And the assumption is like, I'm now done fighting with you, I am wrong. Or I might not be wrong, but we're not getting anywhere. We need to end this argument. We're going to drop it now. At that point in time, your wife does not drop it, because what does she need? She needs to close it out, right? She needs to vent, and there needs to be some apologies, and there needs to be some ending, right? And so like the husband will say, well, let's drop it. And she says, wait a minute. And she keeps talking. What does the husband do? He gets grumpy, or he walks away, or he shuts down, or he fights, which is like the dumbest thing you can do, right? When the husband doesn't want to take it to the closure point, because that's not what we do. Women, we talked about last week that men compartmentalize and women are integrated, right? Because women are integrated, when the husband shuts down, they take it personally. Right? Like, this is a personal affront to me. You are hurting me on purpose, and that's why you're not talking to me about your feelings now. And the husband sees it as an attack, because everything is an attack. We're trying to walk away, and you're following me, trying to continue the fight. And the husband thinks, I don't want to fight about this anymore. Let's stop. And why are you trying to pick a fight with me? Why are you... And it turns into that crazy cycle thing very quickly. I mean, has anybody ever had an argument that kept going when it shouldn't have, because both of you were trying to stop the argument your own way? And it turns into the crazy cycle, and it just keeps going. Husbands, this is where like this Jesus thing, like part of this Jesus thing plays out. What you need is for it to stop. What they need is closure. Since yours is about hitting the stop button, and theirs is about like having an emotional need met, like the honorable thing for you to do is to meet their need, right? And it isn't cool. You're not going to enjoy it, right? Because it means you have to have a conversation past the point where you don't want to talk about it anymore, and you're kind of going to feel attacked, and you're going to want to be defensive, and you're going to want to shut down, and you're going to want to like whatever. But it needs to, I mean, that's the point where it's got to end. Like, and you got to end on their terms, because like as Peter puts it, right? Like they're the more vulnerable party. You can hurt them. They have to work to hurt you. And in fact, actually, if they hurt you, all you really do is shut down and disengage, and that's it, right? And that hurts them even more, which, anyway, becomes a big snowball. Anybody watch that happen? So here's how you do this, gentlemen. You apologize. Right? When we apologize, men, we usually assume that we're wrong. Women, cover your ears. For women, it's not always about whether you're right or wrong. You're not losing your fight if you apologize. You're ending the fight. Do you understand? Is it true, women? I'm going to get some mixed opinion on that. It is, if the argument's over, most women will stop and say, oh, well, I'm wrong too, or I pushed this too far, or this.
Yeah, it's got to be genuine, though.
Yeah.
I mean, if it's not genuine, you're just trying to end the argument.
I'm not saying that you should lie,
To
but I'm not saying you should lie. What I'm saying is, at the point in time where you've got this conflict going on and the conflict is over, and because of like the conflict that you've helped it be, like she needs to have this emotional closure. I'm not saying you should lie to her, but I'm saying it's appropriate to say, hey, you know what, like this should not have gone as far as it has. You know, I should not have pushed this as far as I have. I should not have helped this get to be this big. Is that an accurate apology? Is that an appropriate apology?
I think I would say it's appropriate when they know who you are as, being your spouse.
Well, if you've been married a while, they probably know,
That's, definitely when you've been married a while. It's just something you learn as your marriage goes on.
Well, but the other thing is so here's the other thing. The longer you argue, the more you tend to dig your heels in. Both of you, right? I mean, it's just true. And you don't stop digging your heels in until you stop fighting. And a lot of times apology is about hey, let's stop fighting about this and actually discuss it maybe. Or, hey, let's, not hold our fists up anymore because we're done arguing. We're done fighting. If we need to resolve something, let's resolve it instead of doing what we're doing. I mean, that's a reasonable way to use an apology too, isn't it? What I'm saying is, without an apology, and if you hold out until she apologizes, even if you think you're right, and I'm going to hold out until she apologizes, she's never going to get her closure. Is that fair? And you're going to plant seeds of bitterness, and that's, I don't know. It's not worth it. It's really not. And it makes your next fight even easier because women tend to remember the last fight better than we do.
That's what I was gonna ask. This has to do with the so-called list that we keep.
So-called.
You want to explain that better? Since I'm not saying that out loud.
I was just wondering if that has to do with that.
Yes.
If the closure thing.
Yeah, it does. It has to do with that integration thing where women remember things and everything is about everything else.
Is that why when it's done for men, it's gone?
Mm-hmm.
Or
yeah. Unless we allow ourselves to become bitter. Sometimes men become bitter and we stew. And that's if you let a man win or lose every fight, and get shut down every time and get crushed every time and retreat every time, eventually he's going to hit a point where he's going to remember things too because all he does is lose. And he's going to remember, oh, it's this. Oh, it's this. But that's kind of the other direction. We're going to get to that when we get to it, right? Right now we're talking about women and how men need to serve their wives. And it does involve giving your wife closure. It means apologizing. It sometimes means figuring out why you need to apologize. But if you wait out for her to apologize for you to win the fight, that's a dumb way to fight. I'm married only 17 years. I'm not even the longest married man in this room. It is a really dumb way to fight. Winning an argument is the surest way to lose in the long run. I mean, it just is. It's stupid. And it's not usually what she needs. And I've only on a couple of occasions had fights big enough where I needed to fight it out to the very end. It's a very unusual thing.
I can say something in front of my wife that I'm not even scared to say is when we've argued and we've walked away, when I thought I won the fight, I guarantee you, when I walk about another 10 feet, I realize I just lost that fight.
You usually ever come back and say, hey, honey, I was wrong and I just screwed up?
You don't win that fight. You just lost that fight because of what you said or what you did. And there, you're thinking, oh, you know, there might be that glory period for all 2 seconds, and then you go, this is terrible.
See, what's dangerous for guys is that, like, when we realize, oh man, I screwed up, like, we tend to just take that with us. You know, and like, that was dumb, I shouldn't, but you don't want to jump back into that, you know. You don't jump back in the blender once you get out of it. You know, I mean, like, this is a dangerous thing. Like, and so it's really hard to come back and say, like, hey, you know what? That was dumb. And here's the reason, and that's the apology, right?
Well,
I mean, that's a reasonable apology.
You were gone, so you don't have to come back and say anything.
Hey, you know, that actually doesn't work.
Well, you're thinking that, her list just keeps
But you know what makes it hard though is that like women, that piles up, man. And it becomes this like huge like open sore. And that's really hard to overcome in the long run. Like you have to work.
God usually steps in and slaps you upside the head. And if you're in tune at all, hey.
Yeah. I'll tell you, my experience was I got to do lots of dumb things over and over and over and over again for years and years and years and years, and God slapped me upside the head like it was the worst thing I've ever been through. And you know, I would not want to do it again, and I remembered every time I get into a bad place with my spouse that I don't want to be on God's wrong side. Much worse than, yes?
You said you don't want to jump, like men are scared to jump back into the blender, but don't they realize that if they go back and apologize, more than likely most of the time, and they say, okay, I'm really sorry, like, this is genuine, it's not gonna turn in, the blender's not gonna turn on again, it's...
No, we don't.
You know,
No, it's not even just that we don't. Now watch this, it goes a step further than that, right? Like, because for men, like a huge chunk of what we're about is our pride. No, but it is the truth. Men are about our pride. You know, we want to be respected and we want to be like these things. And usually when it hits the point that you're arguing, like men become unloving, women become less respectful to their husbands. And like that's a huge like thing for a man to just overcome. And I'm not putting this lightly like, hey, you need to figure out how to make it right and you need to figure out how to end the argument like in a way that meets her emotional needs, and you need to find, you know, if you let this argument go this far, you do have an apology on you. I don't, you know, it just is what it is. I mean, you have to bring it to an end and you got to be mature in it. Like, and that sucks sometimes. And it's really hard for guys because it's counter to our nature, most of us.
But she's right. You may not want to jump back in the blender, but you have to come back in and realize that that spouse of yours is not, do you really think that they're there just to make your life miserable or to hurt you that bad? And, you know, when we come back to Ann, or if we've had a fight like that, come back, she has also thought about this, and I'm telling you, it's a wonderful thing when you talk back to one another and you solve that conflict. And you're not going to solve that conflict by staying apart. It's not going to happen. It just hangs over you like a cloud, like Linus, you know, falling around in the peanut country and all that dirt is still there.
That's a Big Ben.
Big Ben? Okay, there we go.
Because women know that you do have a pride issue, so when you start that over...
What? I'm just happy he's laughing.
I'm just saying, you know.
I mean, if you, like, then if you come back and you apologize, we know that was hard for you, and so then we respect you for doing that.
That's-
It reverses that.
I would say that like, I would say that if it goes that way, that's a huge thing. Like, I don't know that it always does. Yes, Rebecca?
Well, I think it's hard for us women to like comprehend that men don't understand it, but it would be the same if we said every time we had an argument, we needed to drop it. Like, just drop it, leave it alone. That is a foreign concept to us. Like, no way, there's no way we're dropping this. Even if we say, okay, we've dropped it, it's not dropped. So like, it's that whole thing of like, it seems impossible to you know, it's the same thing with the little girls. You know, they come back and one girl says they're sorry, and then they're all like, well, I'm sorry too, and it was my fault. You know, like, it goes that way, and women just get that. Like, we know we can go back to these women, other women, and say this, and things are gonna be okay. But if some girl came up to me and said, just drop it, and we never talked about it again, it never dropped.
You'd be
Like,
hurt.
it would never have dropped. And I think that's like, the easiest way I can think about relating it is like, I can't imagine doing that. So then to keep my mouth shut when he's needing to process is a hard thing for me. Like, you want me just to wait till you're ready and not poke at you and ask if you're ready and let's just see if you're ready. I think we were talking about that, you know, being a bee and like, are you ready? That kind of thing. So.
When men enters the arena again, the last thing he wants to do, because he wants to drop it, the last thing he wants to do is start this whole thing back up again.
Oh, we don't.
If that's where it's going, I guarantee you we're not going back in the arena. You know, that's just why you want. Whoa, you know, we just had all this out or whatever. It's not what this is. Well, that's not what I'm here for. So I mean, it's got to be something different, or you learn that you don't go back in that arena. That's the last. You don't open that door.
It is a hard thing. Well, and we can. Keely had her hand up.
Well, I was just gonna say that, I don't know, probably for me, I would say 70% of the time it's, and I can't speak for all women, but I think we start most of the arguments. Because we have the things that are like on our heart, and we have the feelings, like, I need to talk about this, I need to discuss it, so I know for us, like, are you smirking?
He has the trained husband face that like, don't move.
If I'm being completely honest, it's 90% of the time me who has to come back and like put my foot in my mouth and say, I'm sorry that I took it that far.
But like husbands, it's not very easy to let that conversation happen.
Yeah, but I mean, I'm saying like in general, like I see what you're saying about it being on the men, but I would say like what I've noticed most about, you know, women is that we're the ones who, you know, most men don't just come home and be like, well, let me just tell you all about the things I'm just so angry about and the things I just want to bring up to you to start a conflict. We're like, I just wish you would be this and do this more and our kids blah blah blah. Because I mean, I'll admit that I do that, and so I think, you know, like as women, we have to step up to the plate and realize that sometimes we're the ones that have to come back and say, I'm sorry that I did that.
I think one of the other things I think I didn't mention is that when men fight, they tend to blame because it's all about winning. And so when like you really get into it, like part of what you're doing like as a man is you tend to like argue as to why you're not wrong, which means that she's wrong, and so she generally feels blamed, and it turns into like, this is why you're wrong and I'm right. And like that kind of makes things worse. And like when we blame, we do need to clean that up.
Right.
And like that's, even if, I mean, it's just not a productive way to argue. It's not a healthy way to argue. I'm gonna bump forward to our next slide. I actually have a video, and I eliminated it because I decided that it was a little off color, but it was all about like reasons women argue. And it was things like, it was this, you know, sometimes I argue because I had a bad day and you had a good day and I just needed to make sure you had a bad day too. You know, or sometimes I argue because I want to argue with you so that we can like get some talking in because we're not talking right now. You know, or sometimes I argue so that you can get mad so that we can make up. Like, what? You know, if you remind me, I'll show it afterwards. It's, yeah. Loyalty. The next two move very quickly. I think I might have a video though. It's probably.
Honey, if I died, would you remarry?
I guess so, eventually.
Would you let her drive my car?
Well, if I didn't, it would depreciate, so yeah, I guess so.
Would you let her sleep in our bed?
I guess, I don't know, I guess so.
Would you let her wear my clothes?
No. She wears a smaller size.
Your spouse just
All right, so here's what's tricky about this, right? One of the things that women need is loyalty. They need commitment from their husband. They need to know that their husband will be there. They need to know that their husband will remain connected to them. They need this, right? It's something that'll come up with the intimate needs under his needs, her needs, which we'll talk about in a few weeks. But women often feel very insecure. Like I think our culture trains them that way, but it's also sort of built into how they are emotionally. They feel insecure. By the way, if you want to get yourself in lifetimes with the trouble, threaten to kick your wife out or divorce her. Like that's the bad word in our house. We don't say the D word. And we don't threaten to leave. You know, that's out of bounds. Because like what you're doing then is you're going after like one of these basic needs that women have. They need loyalty. They need to know that they're there for the long haul, right? And that gets worse as women age, because our culture kind of tends to tell them, you know, if you get wrinkles, if you gain weight, if your hair changes colors, if these things happen, like you're less desirable. And they tend to get very insecure. And like part of what women need is reassurance that you are there, that you are committed, that you are, like they are important to you, that you still love them. And you actually have to say it over and over again, like that I love you and I still love you and I love you more today than I did yesterday. Men, if your wives catch you looking at other women, that threatens them in that respect. They feel like less secure in their position because they feel like, oh, well, you know, am I it? You know, are there other women? What happens? It's very important to let a woman know, you know, that you are there and that you are not leaving and that you will be with her for the long run. Reassuring, love for life. I'm sorry, I'm starting to feel a little not well, and so I'm having trouble kind of working through this to make sure if I'm repeating myself, I apologize. You have to act like it's the truth, first off, like you're committed to your marriage and to your family. But beyond that, it means that you have to keep strong, like careful boundaries in other relationships. Does that make sense? So like, there are no other people that occupy the space that my wife occupies, right? You know, you don't spend time that way, you don't have those conversations, you don't, you know, like for example, women, wives, is it ever acceptable for your husband to have a conversation with another woman about how your marriage is going?
No.
Ever?
Nope.
The reason for that is because it threatens your position, right? It's almost being unfaithful, right? Like it's a loyalty issue. You have to maintain very strong boundaries. You have to like make it very clear. You have to be very open with your wife about the fact that you're maintaining strong boundaries. This applies to everything. It's not just your relationships, it's everything. You need to make it clear this is you. It's why it's important to take your wife out on dates periodically. It's why it's important to, there was a long time when I needed the TV to sleep. I had trouble sleeping because the TV was off. You know, my wife can't sleep with noise. So I would like sleep on the couch with the TV on and she would sleep in the bedroom. And like, she hated that. And like, eventually I had to learn to sleep like with headphones on because she couldn't cope with that. Like it was just it was bad because like, it's important to wives that you sleep in the same bed, right? Because that is a loyalty thing. That is, I am here. And it was something that was very difficult for me because I had to change my sleep patterns for that. But for my wife, that was a big deal, right? This wife in this, what?
Are you gonna be okay?
Yeah, I'm fine. The wife in the video, is she really, what's she asking about when she's asking her husband about if he would remarry?
If she's replaceable.
Yeah, do you love me? Am I replaceable? Are you here for the long haul? Do you consider other women? Do you ever think about this? Do you ever, you know, and that's husbands, when you hear your wife asking that question, you know, what do you think of this? Or would you ever? You need to remember that 80% of the time when wives are asking you questions, they're not asking you the question you think they're asking you, right? Women have motives. 80% might be a low guess. Everybody's gonna beat me up in the parking lot. Esteem. I have a video for this. Actually, I have two videos. The first one is a Dove soap commercial.
Oh, it's this one. I love
Have
this.
y'all? Has everybody seen this?
Yes,
Oh my gosh.
this is a great one.
I'm a forensic artist. Worked for the San Jose Police Department from 1995 to 2011.
I showed up to a place I'd never been, and there was a guy with a drafting board. We couldn't see them, they couldn't see us.
Tell me about your hair.
I didn't know what he was doing, but then I could tell after several questions that he was drawing me.
Tell me about your chin.
It kind of protrudes a little bit, especially when I smile.
Your jaw.
My mom told me I had a big jaw.
What would be your most prominent feature?
Kind of have a fat, rounder face.
The older I've gotten, the more freckles I've gotten.
I would say I have a pretty big forehead.
Once I get a sketch, I say thank you very much, and then they leave. I don't see them.
All I had been told before the sketch was to get friendly with this other woman, Chloe.
Today I'm gonna ask you some questions about a person you met earlier, and I'm gonna ask you some general questions about their face.
She was thin, so you could see her cheekbones. And her chin, it was a nice, thin chin.
She had nice eyes. They lit up when she spoke.
Cute nose.
She had blue eyes, very nice blue eyes.
So here we are. This is the sketch that you helped me create, and that's a sketch that somebody described of you.
So yeah, that's... She looks closed off and fatter. Sadder, too. The second one looks more open, friendly, and happy. I should be more grateful of my natural beauty. It impacts the choices and the friends that we make, the jobs we apply for, how we treat our children. It impacts everything. You couldn't be more critical to your happiness.
Do you think you're more beautiful than you say?
Yeah. We spend a lot of time as women analyzing and trying to fix the things that aren't quite right. And we should spend more time appreciating the things that we do like.
What's the basic message behind the commercial? Buy Dove soap.
I like the man's version.
We're gonna do that next. Okay, what's the basic message?
You don't see yourself, you don't see yourself critical of yourself.
Women tend to be much more critical of themselves. Is it true? Women are, well, a great deal of advertising in our culture that's aimed toward women is all about how you could be this pretty, right? You know, it's you know, hey, you're not good enough, or hey, you know, and women tend to be very uncomfortable about things like weight or appearance or whatever. I mean, these are things that make women feel uncomfortable. The last one on our list is E, which if I can find it, esteem. And I have another video, actually. This is a pink and a blue thing, right? And I included the second one just for you, Mark.
Oh my gosh, I love this one.
My name is Jeff Smith. I've been a forensic artist for the LAPD for over 25 years. We showed up to a place we'd never been, and there was a guy there with a drafting board. We couldn't see them, they couldn't see us. Tell me about your eyes. I couldn't figure out what was going on at first, but after a few questions I realized he was drawing us. Tell me about your eyes.
a lot of people say they're an abyss because they just don't end.
My mom said I had the most beautiful teeth, and so I love to smile.
What would you say is your most prominent feature?
Oh, God.
Probably my bulge. I would say the older I've gotten, the more stunning I've gotten.
I would say I have a balanced face. Almost like a white Denzel Washington.
Once I get a sketch, I say thank you very much, and they leave. I don't see them.
All I had been told before the sketch was to get friendly with this woman.
I don't know, I guess his face was like kind of dirty looking.
Overall, I'd say he really looked like a lawn gnome.
He looked like he smelled really bad, and he did, actually. I don't know, I guess his eyes just kind of like bugged out when he talked. I can't remember if he had eyebrows. Does anyone remember if he had eyebrows?
His eyes were
Gosh.
rapey. Makes sense.
You know, like something out of, like fresh out of Mordor.
Wow. This is a sketch you helped me create. And this is a sketch that's
like a movie star. Probably die soon.
Opinions could be so bad. And I refuse to believe it.
So do you think you're more beautiful than you say?
The reason I picked those two videos is kind of to illustrate to the guys, sorry. Women tend to think less of themselves, like you know, women who are very beautiful or what have you, they tend to have bad things to say about their appearance. My wife, I think my wife is beautiful. My wife is more beautiful the longer I know her. I have pictures of her all over my office, and I look at pictures of my wife all the time. I say my wife is gorgeous, and she doesn't think that. She always has bad things to say about how she looks, and she's wrong. I mean, but like because women tend to be insecure and they tend to think less of how they appear, and they tend to think less of themselves. Like it's sort of this unfortunate thing that happens.
So is that the only argument that you can have that's legitimate? Like, telling her that she's wrong about her appearance?
Oh, you can tell her she's wrong about a lot of things.
Do you want to sleep on the couch?
It is seldom the case that you will get into a shouting match over how pretty you think she is versus how pretty she doesn't think she is. Okay, if you've reached that point, you're doing it wrong. Like that is not, that is a bad direction to go in, Mark. You need to take the remedial marriage class.
It's kind of like if she feels fat and you give her a box of chocolate, it's not going to help. All the time.
Or a scale. Wives need to feel treasured, right? They need to feel treasured by you. They need to feel like you are, like you consider to be the most important thing in the world. The guy in the first video, the reason he could say things like badly is because he made his wife feel important, right? And the other guy, he made his wife feel fantastic until, well, women fall for that. And the mistake was that women need to hear that. They need to hear that they're cherished. They need to hear that they're treasured. That's actually why it's important to remember their birthdays, right? Because remembering birthdays and anniversaries and all of these other holidays that I can barely remember mine at this point. But if you forget those things, it's such a big deal because it's basically saying, yeah, well, these dates aren't that important to me. You know, in fact, actually, the lecture I drew this out of, the guy talks about, he says, look, I know men who will buy their wife a new car when they're in a lot of trouble. And it just makes it worse because they know they're trying to bribe the wife knows they're trying to get bribed. He's trying to bribe me, and it just makes it worse. He says, if you take your wife out and you talk about some of your treasured memories while you're out walking, You know, oh, I remember us doing this together. I remember these times together. I remember when we did this. And you pick up a stone from that walk and you write a letter to her about how much it meant spending the day talking to her about those moments. And you give her the stone and say, well, you know, pick this up while we're walking and hold on to it and remember it. It means a lot to her, doesn't it? My wife kept flowers I picked up on the side of the road out on North Road. I picked them up and I wrote her a note about how much, you know, I was thinking about her, and I was out walking and the flowers smelled pretty and they looked pretty and always reminded me of her, and so I picked a couple of them for her. And she has them in a book somewhere, right? And it kind of surprised me. I came across them, I'm like, you kept these things? They're like ditch weeds, right? Like I didn't say that because I'm not dumb, but like I looked at her and I thought, huh, you know, yeah. Well, that's what I mean. Like they're wildflowers. Actually, that's I think the word I use. But you know what I mean. Like those kinds of things mean a lot to women. Am I wrong, ladies? Because it makes them feel esteemed and treasured. If you want to serve your wife in the best way possible, it means telling her that she's important and reassuring her and remembering things with her and like going out of your way to make her feel valuable. This will be especially difficult during hunting season or football season or, you know, whatever. Like there are all these things that get in the way of catching our interest or when we're tired or whatever. But wives need to hear that. I mean, it's a huge deal. You want to make your wife feel loved, this is the way. Little things. Also speaking reassurance, like repeating her value. She needs to know that you're thinking about her. Gentlemen, if you need help with this, I found a couple of good resources that have worked very well for ideas. I did a thing 3 months ago. My wife went on about it for several days. I got this idea from this thing I was listening to where I wrote Post-it notes, like a dozen Post-it notes, and I numbered them, one of 12, and I hid them all over the house at night before I went to bed. And she found the first Post-it note when she got up, and she spent the day looking for Post-it notes. And like it was, this huge deal. These like, oh, I appreciate that you do this, and oh, I love this, and I think I printed up a picture of a date we went on, and I put it on there. I said, oh, I think about this a lot. Like I really enjoy doing this with you. And wives love that kind of stuff, right? It's not natural to us. We don't do that because it doesn't mean it's just not the same for us. It doesn't mean the same thing to us. But you have to work at it, and it's important. You got to be intentional. It's part of your job. Behavioral. I'll try to move quick, guys. I know I'm kind of getting. I said we'll be done before 8:30, and here we are at 8:20. Joint agreement. These are the policies. So we went through the love busters. They were the 3 related to arguing, like the selfish demands, disrespectful judgments, and angry outbursts. Right? Those are the arguing ones. And then last week we talked about the next 3, which were, dishonesty, right? And I don't remember the rest.
Separate ways
Oh yeah, independent behavior where you live a life separate from her and you don't consult and all that. And then there was a third one, and I'm starting to feel kind of off. So, so the policies are ways to get around these, right? The arguing ones about learning to negotiate. You actually have to be able to negotiate to make decisions together, and we'll talk about that way down the line. Well, maybe next time we meet. I haven't decided yet. But these are the 3 that relate to the other 3 love busters. So you're going to work through them. These are policies to apply to your marriage. If you lay these down and agree on them, it'll actually take an awful lot of conflict out of your lives, and so this makes everything easier. The policy of undivided attention. Give your spouse your undivided attention a minimum of 15 hours a week. Using the time to meet emotional needs of affection, sexual fulfillment, intimate conversation, and recreational companionship. The 4 most important emotional needs for men, the 2 most are sex and doing things for fun, which are kind of...
So is it wrong if we knock both of them out at once?
As long as you're getting the 15 hours in a week, I don't care what you do. Oh my gosh. You're welcome, Kellen. For wives, it's the need for affection and the need for intimate conversation, meaning that wives want, like, for you to be affectionate, hugging, holding hands, these sorts of things. And they want to have conversations with you. They actually want to talk to you. Because they haven't been listening all this time. They don't know better yet. These are important because, well, actually I have a video for this one. And it's kind of a funny video, so I'm going to use it. Have you seen it?
You know, we should go out.
Yeah, we haven't done that in a while.
How is Friday?
Friday I'm supposed to go out with the girls, remember?
I'm sorry. Okay, I am ready.
Great.
Did you just get out of the shower?
Yup.
Well, how much time are you gonna need?
Like 15 minutes.
15. It's not gonna be 15 minutes.
So are we eating inside or outside?
I don't know.
Well, if we're eating outside, does the restaurant have heat lamps?
I've never been there before. What, you want me to call? Do you guys have patio heaters? You do? Great. No? That's it, thank you.
I'm ready.
So let me go put on my shoes.
I thought you said you were ready.
I am ready, I just don't have shoes on.
You're not ready. There's a spot.
It's too small.
We passed a bunch back there.
I think I can find something closer.
Hi. Hello. Two of us. Inside or outside?
Outside.
Inside.
Why'd I call?
I just wanted to know what my options were.
So what do you think?
I got the fish and chips.
That's what I was gonna get.
Great. Both get fish and chips.
Oh, we both can get the same thing. That defeats the purpose of going out to dinner.
All right. Then I will get the bolognese. You get the fish and chips, and we'll go halvesies.
I don't want to be halvesies.
And we'll both get fish and chips.
Halvesies is fine. All right, here we are.
Ooh.
So thank you.
Looks amazing. Thank you. Are you kidding me right now?
I should have got the bolognese.
Oh my god.
All right, can I get you guys anything for dessert?
Oh my gosh, we stop.
Yeah, I thought there was no inside the umbrella.
Oh my gosh. So, what's next?
That's it. It's end of my plans. We can go to a bar.
Too old for bars. We go on a walk.
My feet kind of hurt. So what do you want to do? What do you think of these?
Nice.
Right?
Yeah. Thanks for a great date night.
No, it doesn't have to end there, if you know what I mean.
What do you have in mind? Okay.
All right, so the reason 15 hours a week, right? We talked about this at the beginning of the behavioral when we started talking about Love Busters. The idea behind this is, with the behavioral things, these are about developing conditioning behaviors that produce an emotional response, right? Emotions tend to be very chemical. They tend to be very like up and down and fleeting and all this other stuff. But the reality is, if you meet each other's emotional needs enough, you will develop feelings of affection that are like most commonly called love in our culture, right? I would argue love is a bigger thing, but like that sort of Twitter patient you had when you were dating, like that's a product of, that's a product of meeting each other's needs. When you were dating, you probably spent an enormous amount of time together. Is that right? Spend time having conversations. You spend time holding hands and cuddling and doing things, I don't know, whatever. Like you spend these times and you make deposits in this love bank, right? You make lots and lots of deposits when you're dating. And when you get married, that tends to change because busy happens. Could you? Children appear, right? Children are the big tricky one, right? There's somebody, I don't remember right now, but somebody said to me, I posted something on Facebook about when did I divorce my spouse and marry my kids, right? Like that's a thing that happens. Like they're there all the time and like, they don't just stop. And so it becomes this huge amount of energy and focus and all that. And it becomes really hard to spend time talking when you have that time. Cuddling sort of gives way to sex, right? I'm tired gets in the way of conversations. Like men tend to talk less because we don't need that done. Like we just don't need to talk. And so we stop meeting that need to our spouse because we don't need to do it. And so if you're going to do, like, regain that, it's 15 hours a week. It doesn't need to be a 15-hour day followed by nothing. 3 hours a day, a couple of hours a day, throughout the day. This is sitting down and having conversations. This is doing something fun together. My aunt and uncle, I lived with them in college on and off, and they would spend their afternoons painting the house together. And that's what they did. They would go out and they'd paint the outside of the house, and then they built a porch swing, like, together. They built this porch swing, you know, and then they did something else to the house. And they did, like, my uncle was a big handyman. He loved doing that kind of thing, and his wife knew he loved it, and so she went out and did it with him. I don't think she liked painting that much, but she did it because men need recreational companionship, right? That is one of our needs. This is where this gets tricky. We tend to try to meet our own needs without meeting our spouse's needs, because our spouse's needs tend not to be as interesting to us, or we get frustrated with them. It's very often the case that wives will complain that all my husband wants is sex, right? And so we complain about, or y'all complain about it, I don't complain about it. And it becomes, well, I don't want to do that, I don't want to do that, I don't want to do that. And then husbands are like, well, I don't want to talk. I don't want to just sit around and cuddle. I don't want to, you know, like these things that we don't want to do. The reality is, if you're going to spend 15 hours a week together and you're only meeting her needs, or she's only meeting his needs, it's going to very quickly become the case that spending 15 hours a week together sucks. Right? You're not going to want to spend 15 hours a week talking, right, guys? I mean, and, you know, I mean, like, it's just a reality. You have to put effort into meeting each other's needs. You have to aim to meet each other's needs. We'll talk more about that in probably starting next week or 2 weeks from now. But this is neglecting your spouse's need in the name of busyness is one of the surest poisons to your relationship. You have to make time to do it. You have to schedule time to do it. You have to do it on purpose. The video I showed, where did they start, right? They took out their calendars. When would you like to go out? This is sometimes the case. Like, we just don't have time to do it. My wife and I have been trying to go on a date for 2 weeks now. It's just not very easy, right? Like, it's just not, because we have kids and jobs and responsibilities and, you know, budgets and all of this stuff. Like, it just gets in the way. But if you're not doing it, like, you know, even sitting down and playing a board game, or sitting down and eating a meal together, or, hey, look, the kids are taking a nap, you know, oh my gosh. So you have to plan these things, and you have to be very intentional about it. If you trade your kids for your marriage, or if you trade your job for your marriage, or if you trade your in-laws for your marriage, or if you trade your anything else, hobbies, whatever, it will, like, you'll be sorry in the long run. There's no way to win that. Everybody with me? Everyone's still awake? Anybody want to argue with me yet? One of the hardest things about setting marriage counseling is scheduling. This is like one of the common complaints amongst marriage counselors. Trying to get both members of the relationship free on the same day to do marriage counseling. Guess what the problem then is? Just don't spend time together, so they don't meet each other's needs, so they fall out of love, and that's kind of it. And it gets easier to fight when you're not meeting each other's needs. Men tend to argue less when they have sex more, right? Women tend to argue less when they feel like validated and valued and treasured and all that other stuff. Is it true? It's a reality. You want to fight less, meet your spouse's needs, and you won't fight as often. Privacy is one of the requirements here. This includes friends, in-laws, inlays, I misspelled it. Your kids. You can't make good love bank deposits when you're, like, with other people. You just can't. Wives want to talk about feelings. Men will never talk about their feelings in front of the neighbors. Right? Just won't happen. There's probably a learning curve there, because after people have kids and do that long enough, raise kids long enough, they forget how to spend time alone together. It's really common for people when their kids leave the house to get divorced, because they just forget how to spend time together. They're like, oh, well, now what do we do? The kids are gone, see ya, you know, kind of thing, and that's a bad thing. Undivided attention means that you spend time like actually with each other. That does not mean watching television or watching a movie. which, you know, kind of feels like a cheat there because it's like, man, that's 2 whole hours. Doesn't that count? And actually the caveat in the article I read on this was, if you spend the time watching the movie like you did when you were dating, then it counts. Just saying. So your objectives in doing this. During that time, you're trying to create activities that meets each other's needs, right? That's emotional or affection, sex, conversation, and recreation. That's playing games, it's hunting, it's talking, it's reminiscing, it's cuddling, it's holding hands, it's having sex. It's all of this stuff. Romance for men is sex and recreation, right? Like men consider it romantic to go out and do stuff together. Women consider it romantic to have a candlelight dinner and have conversation, right? Maybe hold hands. I don't know. I don't understand women. When all 4 come together, like, it tends to work well. You'll sometimes see where couples will try to do one without the other. Sometimes wives will be affectionate with their husbands in public so that nothing can happen, right? Like, oh, we're going to hug and we're going to cuddle and we're going to hold hands because you're not going to make a move on me now. You know, and that way I get what I want, you can't get what you want, which is very passive aggressive and mean. It's best to try and combine them all. After marriage, men on the other hand want their wives to meet their needs for like sex or fun. Without doing that, they don't want to have conversations. It doesn't work. It just doesn't work. Amounts, 15 hours a week. One of the most common things that happens when counselors bring this up is, you can't do that. And they try to talk the counselor out of being able to do it. Like, we just can't do 15 hours a week. That's not possible. We can't do it. We can't do it. We can't do it. All right. Policy of radical honesty. This will be the hardest one on the whole list. It means you tell your spouse as much information about yourself as you know. What you think, what you feel, your habits, your likes, your dislikes, your personal history, daily activities, and plans for the future. This means emotional honesty. Your emotional reactions, positive or negative. Meaning if you don't like something, you shouldn't lie about it. Yeah. Historical honesty, if you've lied about things in the past. Current honesty, meaning if you're hiding things or, you know, you should let them know what you're doing all the time. It should never be the case that your spouse says, I have no idea where my wife is or my husband is and I have not known for, 2 days now. That is a bad thing. Future honesty, meaning what are you going to do? If your spouse doesn't know your plans and is guessing, that will cost you. It is a policy we're setting, meaning you both agree that you will tell each other the truth. The upload for this, the first part is hard because this means everything. Like emotional honesty, if suddenly you find the neighbor attractive and you have been over helping out with chores and stuff and you're like, wow, neighbor's wife's kind of hot, I feel really attracted and we talk a lot and we have a connection. Guess what? That's dangerous, isn't it? That is super dangerous. And so you actually, the safest thing you can do is say, hey honey, I'm kind of feeling attracted to the neighbor, I need to not go over there anymore. And guess what? If you tell your wife that, she ain't gonna let you go over anymore. You're gonna develop a plan to take care of it, right? It's also the case that she might be upset about it, but you have to be super intentional about, I got a video. It's a short one and then...
You're just like your... Say it! You're not mad at me?
No,
You're sure?
I'm fine.
Okay, cool, because I know. Top of the line, baby, you're gonna love it.
A scale Wow, I lost 5 now.
Nice, 25 to go.
5 more to go. Trust, you never listen to anything I say.
Relax.
These pants are really tight. Did you put them in the dryer?
No, but I can put you on a treadmill. We're a team. We're a dynamic duo. She's my side chick. Side chick! Happy Valentine's Day! Because you're hot and steamy. Why can't you be more like Jimmy's wife?
What?
I said what? Hi, I'd like to order flowers for my wife.
I wanted to say, baby, I love you. You're the only one for me.
Right, I was wrong.
All right, pick a partner.
The trick with honesty, right? I'm sorry, there is one more. The trick with honesty is you have to do it the right way, right? If you say things the wrong way, you're going to get in trouble. If you say things mean, if you say things angry, if you say things judgmental, it's going to make it worse. You have to be honest in a way that doesn't like make things worse. Policy of joint agreement, meaning that you enthusiastically agree on every decision you make. It means negotiating sometimes. This rule requires that couples actually be sensitive to each other's thoughts and feelings, meaning like you both have to agree. And so like you can't just do something without your spouse's thing. This means, like the example I would point to that is really painful. Hey, I invited my in-laws over for a month, or I invited my family over for a month. Our in-laws are going to be living in the house with us for the next month. And like I didn't ask, and because it's an independent behavior, and I may not like it, but you're stuck with it. Make sense? That would be a joint, like one of those policy things. Like you just have to agree on it. You have to negotiate fairly. So if you shout at your spouse and say, "This is what's going to happen," she isn't going to enthusiastically agree. Like you will never get her to enthusiastically agree. So you have to like actually have to be nice, or you just never get anything done. If you do this, it helps you like create the sustained feeling of love. It also means that nobody sacrifices. Like if one of you has to sacrifice everything for the other, like eventually you're gonna get pissed off, right? Like if it's agreed upon that the wife does every chore in the house, eventually it's gonna wear her out. That's all there is to it. And like very seldomly will a wife just make that agreement. Like you negotiate it, you come to we'll talk about negotiation in the future. Here are the exceptions. If one of you is at risk in your health or whatever, out the window, right? So like, hey, my husband's beating me up. Should I go to the police? Well, let's discuss it. Nope. Out the window, right? It shouldn't be used to hide information from each other. Like, oh, hey, look, the husband's, had an affair, but I don't agree to tell my wife. Yeah, that's, or she asks, hey, what's going on here? Well, I don't agree to have this conversation, so no, that you can't use it to hide information or to screw the other one over. It's not for you to use it as an advantage. Or sometimes people will use it as a way to control or isolate, meaning there are people who are so miserly that they will not buy toothpaste, right? And so like, I will not agree to buy groceries this month. We're going to be eating things I pick up in the lawn, right? Nope. Like that would be because I won't agree ever to spend money. That's manipulation of the policy. It exists to help you like work together. Enthusiastic agreement. These are the three policies. Did I do all three, or do I have one more? Oh, that's the last one. The reason that these work is they get you around the love busters, and they force you to talk to each other. Everybody with me? That is all. I am long, even though I cut a bunch of junk out of it. Can't believe it. Have a good night, guys.